Ladies and gentlemen, there are moments in life when we feel like everything is falling apart: our dreams, our plans, even our sense of purpose. It's in these painful, confusing seasons that we often ask, why me? But what if the breaking isn't punishment? What if it's preparation? When God breaks you, He's building you. That breaking is not the end, it's the beginning of becoming who you were truly meant to be. Let me walk you through 5 powerful truths that prove this. Number 1. Breaking shatters pride to unleash purpose. There comes a point in life when we all experience a breaking moment. An emotional collapse, a shattered dream, or an unexpected storm that knocks us off balance. In those moments, we feel like we're being torn apart. Everything we once leaned on seems to crumble, our confidence wavers, our plans are disrupted, and at the center of that breaking is something deeper: our pride. Pride is subtle, it's not always loud or boastful. Sometimes it shows up as self-reliance, the belief that we can do everything on our own. It shows up when we avoid vulnerability, when we refuse to ask for help, or when we try to control every outcome. But breaking comes to strip us of those illusions, not to shame us, but to show us something greater. When pride is present, purpose stays hidden. We might be moving, achieving, performing, but without alignment to our deeper calling. Pride can make us chase things that impress others, but leave us feeling empty inside. We start building a life based on what looks good rather than what feels right. But then the breaking comes. It could be a failed relationship, a job loss, a betrayal, a health crisis, or even a period of deep internal confusion. And suddenly, what once made us feel in control is gone. The walls come down, and all that's left is us, raw, exposed, unsure. In this state of brokenness, something incredible begins to happen. With our pride shattered, space is created for something new. We start to ask different questions. Not how can I win, but what am I meant to do? And not how can I look successful, but what truly matters to me. In that vulnerable place, our true purpose begins to whisper. It doesn't shout. It doesn't demand attention. It waits for us to be quiet enough to listen. Pride often makes us wear masks. We perform for the world, afraid to show weakness. We stay in roles that don't fulfill us just to maintain an image. But breaking exposes all of that. It demands honesty, and in that honesty we finally see ourselves. Not the version others expect, but the one we were created to be. Purpose isn't found in perfection. It's found in surrender. And surrender is only possible when pride has been stripped away. Some of the most powerful people in history didn't find their calling in seasons of victory. They found it in seasons of defeat. They were broken first, they were humbled, and in that humility they became unstoppable. That's not a coincidence, it's a divine pattern. Breaking brings us to our knees, not so we stay there, but so we rise with a clearer vision. It removes the clutter. It burns away what doesn't belong. It humbles us so we can hear the deeper calling that's been waiting all along. There's a strange freedom in being broken. At first, it feels like loss. But over time, it becomes liberation. You no longer have to pretend. You no longer have to impress. You realize that your worth was never in your image. It was always in your essence. Pride tells you that you need to be more. Purpose tells you that you already are enough, and you can't hear that truth until the noise of pride is silenced. The world often teaches us that strength is about power, dominance, and control. But real strength is found in humility, in the ability to say, I don't have all the answers, I can't do this alone, I need help. That's where transformation begins, and that's where true purpose lives. When pride is shattered, we stop striving for approval and start seeking alignment. We move from fear to faith, from pressure to peace, from ego to essence. The process isn't easy, breaking hurts. It feels like losing, but it's actually a refining fire. It purifies, it sharpens, it separates what's temporary from what's eternal, what's surface from what's soul. You begin to understand that your value doesn't come from what you do or how you're seen. It comes from who you are at the core. And with that realization, you begin to move differently. You choose purpose over popularity, meaning over medals, impact over image. Pride tries to write the story itself. Purpose lets the story be written through you. That's why the breaking is necessary. It's the sacred moment where your story changes, where your past no longer dictates your future, where your wounds become wisdom, and where your identity is no longer built on sand but on rock. Sometimes we fight the breaking. We try to hold on to what's falling apart. We try to glue the pieces back together as they were. But what if the breaking isn't meant to be reversed? What if it's meant to be embraced? Because the truth is, once pride is broken, the real building begins. Not a rebuilding of your old self, but the construction of someone new, someone braver, wiser, deeper. You start showing up differently. You begin to speak from truth rather than performance. You connect with others more authentically. You stop hiding your scars and start sharing them. And in doing so, you not only walk in your purpose, you help others find theirs. That's the power of being broken. That's the miracle hidden in the pain. It's not about being punished. It's about being positioned. Positioned for something greater than your plans. Positioned to serve. Positioned to lead. Positioned to become exactly who you were always meant to be. So if you're in a season of breaking right now, know this. You're not being destroyed. You're being prepared. Pride may be shattered, but purpose is being revealed. And when the dust settles, you'll see that the breaking wasn't the end. It was the beginning of something far more powerful. Something eternal. Something real. Number 2. Brokenness makes you reach deeper. Brokenness is a word we often try to avoid. It's uncomfortable. It feels heavy. It's not something we willingly invite into our lives. But no matter how much we run from it, brokenness finds its way in. And when it does, everything changes. The world we thought we understood starts to look different. The things we once depended on don't feel so steady anymore. The identity we built begins to crack. But in the middle of that chaos, something sacred begins to happen. Brokenness, as painful as it is, makes you reach deeper. When everything is going well, when life flows according to plan, it's easy to stay on the surface. We go through the motions, we chase the next goal, we live in the familiar and we rarely question it. But when brokenness enters, it disrupts all of that. It interrupts the patterns, the pace, the pride. It throws us into discomfort, and discomfort is the beginning of depth. Because only when life breaks us open do we start looking below the surface. At first, brokenness feels like drowning. You can't find your footing. The things that used to bring you comfort no longer satisfy. The people who once understood you can't seem to reach you anymore. You feel alone in a crowded room, and in that loneliness, you begin to ask questions you never asked before. Not shallow questions, but soul, deep ones. Who am I without this job? What's left when this relationship ends? What is my worth if everything I built has fallen apart? Those questions don't come when life is easy. They only come when life breaks you wide open. And those questions are where growth begins. Reaching deeper means going beyond what is seen. It means getting honest with yourself in a way you never had to before. You begin to see your patterns, you face your fears, you confront the wounds you buried for years. Pain has a way of silencing the noise around you and forcing you to sit with your truth. That silence becomes a mirror. It reflects the parts of you that need healing, not judgment. And in that stillness, you begin to rebuild. Not the same version of yourself, but a deeper, more authentic version. Brokenness invites you to connect with a part of yourself that success and comfort often keep hidden. When life is good, we don't pause to reflect on who we're becoming. We just keep going. But brokenness halts you. It demands attention, and that interruption is often the beginning of transformation. You realize that strength doesn't come from holding it all together. It comes from learning how to fall apart and still choose to rise again. In reaching deeper, you also start to connect with others in a more meaningful way. Surface-level conversations don't satisfy anymore. You begin to crave depth in your relationships. You listen more, you judge less. Because you felt pain, you understand pain in others. Because you've been lost, you recognize the lost more clearly. And suddenly, your brokenness becomes a bridge, not a wall. It connects you rather than isolates you. People often think that being broken is a setback. But what if it's a setup? What if your greatest strength is hidden in your greatest pain? Because it's in those low moments that you find resilience. You discover the kind of courage that isn't loud but unshakable, the kind that allows you to move forward even when the path is unclear, the kind that helps you take another step when everything in you wants to quit. There's a depth of wisdom that only comes from brokenness. It teaches you patience. It teaches you presence. It teaches you how to hold space for your emotions without being consumed by them. You begin to understand that healing isn't about fixing yourself, it's about reconnecting with yourself. The version of you before the world told you who to be. The version of you before fear, comparison, and pressure clouded your vision. And as you continue to reach deeper, you start to find hidden treasures. Talents you never tapped into, passions that were buried, dreams that you gave up on. Brokenness removes the distractions so you can finally see what matters. It refines your priorities. It shows you what's real and what was just noise. You start to live with more intention, more focus, more authenticity. You no longer chase what glitters, you pursue what gives peace. It's in brokenness that you begin to let go. You release the need for control. You surrender the timeline. You stop pretending to be someone you're not. And in that surrender, you find freedom, the freedom to be flawed, the freedom to be human, the freedom to start again. You realize that your value was never in your perfection. It was in your persistence, your decision to keep going, even with scars. Some of the most beautiful souls you'll ever meet are the ones who have been broken. They carry a quiet depth, a kindness that isn't forced, a wisdom that isn't taught, it's earned. They've walked through fire and come out with compassion. They've known loss but still choose love. They don't talk about pain for pity, they talk about it to remind you that healing is possible. You don't have to have it all figured out. Brokenness isn't the end of your story, it's the turning point. It's the chapter where everything changes, not because life gets easier, but because you become stronger. And that strength is not born in victory, it's born in the struggle. The decision to keep reaching deeper when you feel like giving up. The decision to find meaning in the mess. Reaching deeper doesn't happen overnight. It's a process, a journey. Some days you'll feel lost. Other days you'll feel like you've taken a step forward. But every moment you spend in that place of honesty and reflection is shaping you. It's making you wiser. It's aligning you with your purpose. It's stripping away the unnecessary so that your true self can emerge. So if you're feeling broken, don't run from it. Don't hide it. Sit with it. Let it teach you. Let it guide you, because in that brokenness, there's a deeper you waiting to be discovered. A version of you that is more compassionate, more resilient, more aligned. And once you find that version, life will never be the same again. Because you'll no longer be living from the surface, you'll be living from your soul. Number 3. Isolation brings revelation. Isolation is something most people fear. We avoid being alone because silence can feel unsettling, and solitude can feel like a punishment. We're used to being surrounded by noise, conversations, distractions, responsibilities, social media, and constant motion. We fill every quiet space with something just to avoid being alone with our thoughts. But there comes a time when life forces isolation upon us. Whether through heartbreak, failure, illness, or personal transition, we find ourselves in a season where the noise fades and the world feels distant. And while it may feel like everything is being taken away, something sacred is being given, revelation. In the stillness of isolation, you begin to see things that were always there but went unnoticed. When you're no longer wrapped up in the opinions of others, the expectations of the world, or the demands of your environment, you finally have a chance to hear your own voice, and not just your voice, but something deeper. A whisper that doesn't come from outside, but from within. It's the whisper of truth, the voice of clarity, the guidance that's often drowned out by the busyness of life. Isolation strips away the surface layers. It takes you away from what you do and forces you to look at who you are. It doesn't give you the comfort of distraction. It gives you the challenge of reflection. You begin to look at your life honestly, your choices, your habits, your mindset, your relationships, your dreams. You can't run from yourself in isolation. There's nowhere to hide, and that's exactly where revelation begins. It's in isolation that many people discover their calling. It's where ideas are born, books are written, visions are made clear, because with the world silenced, the soul speaks louder. You start to remember what matters. You reconnect with your core. You see the parts of yourself that you've ignored, the wounds you never healed, the patterns you never questioned, the dreams you buried out of fear or failure. You see it all, and though it's uncomfortable, it's necessary. The truth is, many breakthroughs are birthed in quiet places. Some of the most influential people in history found their purpose during seasons of isolation. Because isolation doesn't weaken you, it prepares you. It trains your mind to think independently. It sharpens your spirit. It deepens your awareness. It teaches you to trust your intuition rather than relying on external validation. You learn to move not from noise, but from knowing. In isolation, you also begin to understand who really belongs in your life. When you step away from the crowd, the ones who truly care will still find you. The rest will fade away. That alone is a revelation. Not everyone is meant to walk every chapter with you. Some people were only there for a season. And sometimes you can't see their true role until you step back and look at the bigger picture in solitude. But perhaps the greatest revelation that comes from isolation is about you, your strength, your value, your resilience. When you're alone and still standing, you realize that you're more capable than you thought. You don't need constant affirmation to keep going. You don't need to be surrounded to feel whole. You are enough even in your silence, even in your solitude. This understanding is powerful because it frees you. It frees you from the need to prove yourself. It frees you from the fear of being alone. You begin to realize that being alone and being lonely are not the same thing. One is emptiness. The other is empowerment. In healthy isolation, you find empowerment. You find space to heal. You find permission to grow without pressure. And in that space, revelation flows. Revelation doesn't always come as a lightning bolt. Sometimes it's a slow, gentle unfolding, a quiet realization that shifts everything. You begin to see what you've been tolerating that you no longer want to accept. You see what you've been chasing that never truly fulfilled you. You see the lies you've told yourself that you're not good enough, not ready, not worthy, and you begin to dismantle them one by one. There is something profoundly spiritual about isolation. It's often where people encounter something greater than themselves. When everything else is removed, you begin to feel that deeper connection to your purpose, to your creator, to your inner guide. You realize you were never truly alone, that even in the silence, something was guiding you, protecting you, molding you. This kind of revelation changes your life. You stop settling, you stop shrinking to fit into places you've outgrown, you stop wasting time on what doesn't align, you start living with intention. You start saying no with confidence and yes with conviction. Because now, you're moving from clarity, not confusion. You've seen who you are, and you're no longer willing to betray that truth just to please others. Isolation also gives you the gift of presence. When you're alone, you become more aware of your breath, your thoughts, your emotions, your surroundings. You begin to notice beauty in the smallest things, a sunrise, a quiet moment, a memory, and these details, often overlooked, become sacred. You learn to appreciate life more. You stop rushing and start being. This presence deepens your gratitude, which in turn deepens your peace. Eventually, the season of isolation ends. Life picks up. People return. Noise comes back, but you are different now. You're not the same person who entered that quiet space. You're wiser, stronger, more rooted, and you carry that revelation with you. It becomes your compass. It guides your decisions, it shapes your boundaries, it protects your peace. So if you find yourself in a season of isolation right now, don't resist it. Embrace it, use it, lean into the silence, ask the hard questions. Be honest with your heart, because what feels like a pause might be your preparation. What feels like emptiness might be space for something new to grow. The stillness is not a void, it's fertile ground for revelation. You don't need to fear the silence. In fact, it may be the only place where you'll hear what you've been needing to hear all along. Isolation is not the absence of life, It's the classroom where life teaches its most profound lessons. And if you're willing to listen, you'll walk out of it not only whole, but transformed. Number 4. Pain builds compassion. Pain is one of the most universal experiences of being human. No matter where you come from, what you believe, or how strong you seem on the outside, pain touches every life. It comes in many forms: physical, emotional, mental, or spiritual. It arrives through loss, rejection, failure, disappointment, or betrayal. While pain is often something we wish to avoid, something we run from or numb ourselves against, it holds a secret power. Pain builds compassion. When you experience pain firsthand, your perspective changes. It's like a door opens inside you that wasn't there before. You begin to understand what it means to suffer. You start to realize that behind every struggle is a person who feels just as deeply as you do. Pain teaches empathy, the ability to put yourself in someone else's shoes and truly feel what they are going through. Without pain, compassion can remain shallow or theoretical, but pain makes it real, immediate, and deeply personal. The reason pain builds compassion is because it breaks down the barriers that separate us. When you haven't experienced hardship, it can be easy to judge others or dismiss their struggles. You might think, why don't they just get over it? Or they must be weak if they can't handle this. But once you've walked through pain yourself, those judgments fade. You know how complex healing is. You know how slow recovery can be. You know how sometimes the hardest battles are invisible to the eye. Pain humbles us. It strips away arrogance and forces vulnerability. It reminds us that we are not invincible and that everyone is fighting a battle we might not see. That humility opens your heart to others in a way that success or happiness rarely can. It softens the edges of your soul and allows kindness to flow more freely. You no longer feel the need to protect yourself by building walls of indifference. Instead, you become more open, more understanding, more willing to stand beside someone in their pain rather than turning away. Compassion born from pain is powerful because it's authentic. It's not pity or sympathy, which can sometimes create distance between people. It's a genuine connection, a deep recognition of shared humanity. When you've been broken, you see the brokenness in others without judgment. You listen without rushing to fix or advise. You simply hold space. That presence alone can be healing because it shows people they are not alone. Pain also teaches patience. Healing doesn't happen overnight, and neither does growth. When you've endured pain, you learn to respect the process, your own and others. You understand that everyone moves at their own pace, that setbacks happen, and that grace is necessary. This patience translates into greater compassion because instead of demanding quick results or perfection from others, you offer them kindness and time. Moreover, pain inspires action. Compassion without action can feel hollow. But when you've felt pain, you're often moved to help others avoid or ease their suffering. You become a source of hope, encouragement, and support. You know the importance of a listening ear, a helping hand, or simply someone who cares. That's why many people who have experienced great hardship dedicate their lives to serving others. They want to turn their pain into purpose, their wounds into wisdom. Pain also breaks down prejudices and divisions. When you experience suffering, it can transcend differences like race, religion, culture, or status. Pain connects us on the deepest level. It reminds us that underneath all external labels, we are all vulnerable beings with similar fears, hopes, and needs. This realization fosters compassion that crosses boundaries and builds bridges where walls once stood. Importantly, compassion built through pain is healing not just for others, but for yourself as well. When you help someone else through their struggle, you are reminded of your own strength and growth. It turns your suffering into something meaningful. It creates a cycle of love and care that nourishes your spirit. You find purpose in your pain, and that purpose can be a powerful force for continued healing. However, the process of turning pain into compassion isn't automatic. It requires willingness and courage. Pain can also cause bitterness, anger, or resentment if it's held onto without processing. But when you choose to face your pain, to understand it, and to let it soften your heart, You allow compassion to grow. This transformation is a journey one that involves self-reflection, forgiveness, and often vulnerability. Compassion born of pain also teaches you the importance of boundaries. When you care deeply, it can be tempting to take on others' suffering as your own. But true compassion recognizes the balance between empathy and self-care. It respects limits so that you can give generously without losing yourself. This wisdom comes from having walked through pain and knowing the value of protecting your own heart. Furthermore, pain-built compassion enriches your relationships. It deepens your connections with family, friends, colleagues, and strangers. You communicate with more kindness. You forgive more easily. You offer support without expectation. You become a safe place for others to be real and vulnerable. And in those authentic connections, you find belonging and love. Ultimately, pain builds compassion because it reveals what matters most: connection, kindness, understanding, and love. It teaches that life is not about avoiding hurt, but about embracing humanity in all its complexity. It reminds us that everyone is carrying something difficult, and that a little compassion can make a world of difference. So if you are in pain, know that this too can be a gift. It can open your heart in ways joy never could. It can teach you to see others with new eyes. It can move you to become a source of light in a world that desperately needs it. Pain doesn't have to harden you, it can heal you, deepen you, and make you more compassionate than you ever thought possible. Number 5. God doesn't break what He doesn't plan to use. There are moments in life when everything feels like it's falling apart. Plans you built collapse, the people you trusted disappear, the identity you clung to crumbles under pressure. You question everything: your worth, your path, your future. In those times, it's easy to feel abandoned, to believe that your pain is pointless, that your suffering serves no greater purpose. But there's a deeper truth working quietly beneath the surface. God doesn't break what He doesn't plan to use. It may not feel that way in the moment. When you're being stripped of comfort, clarity, or control, it's hard to see anything good coming from it. But brokenness in the hands of God is never wasted. He doesn't crush for cruelty. He breaks to rebuild. He removes what cannot remain so He can prepare you for what's ahead. Just as a farmer tills hard soil before planting seeds, God softens what has grown hard in us: pride, fear, self-reliance, so He can grow something meaningful in its place. God knows that in order for us to carry something great, we must be shaped for it. And shaping is not always gentle. It requires pressure. It requires stretching. It often involves the tearing down of what's familiar so that something greater can be formed. A potter cannot mold hardened clay. It must be softened, worked, and sometimes even broken apart and reformed. The same is true with our lives. We may look at our broken pieces and think we've been discarded. But God sees potential in every fragment. He picks up what others would throw away. He uses the parts of us we hide, the flaws, the wounds, the failures, as tools in His process. In His hands, brokenness becomes the starting point of purpose. There's a strange grace in being broken. It brings you to the end of yourself. It removes the illusion of control and forces you to rely on something greater. When everything else falls away, you're left with what's true, what's eternal, what matters most. You begin to see how much of your life was built on shallow things: people's approval, achievements, material comfort, and you realize those things were never your foundation. In the breaking, God reveals what truly holds you. Sometimes we ask God to use us, but we don't realize what we're really asking for. We want influence, impact, calling, purpose, but all of those things require capacity. And capacity is created through process, often painful, often hidden, often misunderstood. The weight of purpose is heavy. God builds your strength to carry it through trials, through fire, through breaking. He stretches your heart to love more deeply. He sharpens your discernment. He teaches you how to stand alone, how to lead with humility, how to trust even when you don't understand. Brokenness also makes you relatable. People aren't drawn to perfection. They're drawn to honesty. When you've walked through pain, your story becomes a bridge. Others can find hope in your healing. They can see that failure isn't the end, that sorrow doesn't cancel purpose. Your scars become signs not of shame, but of survival. They show that you've been through something and that you didn't give up. God often uses the very areas where we've been wounded to minister to others. That's not an accident, that's divine strategy. Think about some of the most powerful people you know, not just those in positions of influence, but those whose presence shifts the room. Often, those are the people who have been broken deeply. They've tasted loss, they've endured storms, but they've come out refined, not ruined. Their strength isn't loud, it's quiet, steady, unshakable. That's the kind of strength God builds in seasons of breaking. He's not just preparing you for a moment, He's preparing you for a mission. The process of being broken isn't a sign that you've failed, it's a sign that you're being prepared. You're not being set aside, you're being set apart. God is removing what can't go with you into the next chapter. He's stripping away anything that would sabotage your calling. He's doing deep work not for punishment, but for purpose. Because what He is calling you to requires the truest version of you, not the surface one. There's something sacred about surrendering to this process. When you stop fighting the breaking and start trusting the one who holds you, something shifts. You begin to realize that you're not being destroyed, you're being rebuilt. You're not losing your learning, and every moment of pain is making you more aware, more grounded, more open to the whispers of divine direction. God doesn't waste anything, not the tears, not the waiting, not the loss. He gathers every piece, every moment, every ache, and weaves it into something beautiful. The tapestry might not make sense from the underside, but from His view, it's a masterpiece in progress. You are not forgotten. You are not overlooked. You are in the middle of divine construction. If you feel broken today, know this. You're not being discarded. You're being shaped. What feels like the end might be the beginning. What looks like ruins may be the foundation, and what seems like silence may be the sound of God working behind the scenes in ways you can't yet see. Trust the process, trust the timing, trust the hands that hold you, because God doesn't break what He doesn't plan to use. And if you are being broken, it only means one thing: you are chosen. You are being prepared for something bigger than yourself, something eternal, something worth every scar. So if you're in a breaking season, don't give up. Don't curse the pain. Lean into it. Learn from it. Because when God breaks you, He's not destroying you, He's designing you. You are not being buried. You are being planted. And what grows from this season will shake the very ground you walk on. Thank you.